Hey everyone, so today I have another theory lesson for you today, and this one's all about keys. And we've already learned in the key of G and the key of C, our essential chords, and we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to go more in depth today and hopefully help you to understand what a key is, what notes are in a key, why that even matters, and kind of touch on some of these areas. So the first thing I want to talk about is like, what is a key? A key is a grouping of notes and chords that complement each other, that sound good together. And what you may find if you're just playing around randomly on your guitar or on piano is that sometimes you hit a wrong note. Like, it doesn't sound like it works with the other ones. And that is because all of the notes that you've been playing up to that point have been complementing each other. They have been within a key. You may not have been even realizing it, but you've been playing within a key, and then you hit a note that's outside that key, and you're like, well, that one doesn't seem to fit with the others. And that's why it's good to learn about keys, to understand what notes go together well and maybe what notes won't, so that you don't end up hitting those notes while you're trying to play a song. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to jump over to the keyboard, and I'm going to show you just a basic understanding of the structure of the notes in a particular key. So let's check that out now. Okay, so now we are back at our keyboard, and we're going to look at our first key, which is one we're familiar with, the key of C. And for the key of C, we already know that it has no sharps or flats. So all of these black keys we will not have in the key of C. It is all of the white keys. And the white keys we actually refer to as natural notes, and that just means that they are not sharp or flat. So when we are looking at keys, we have our root note, which in this case for the key of C is C. And that's how we actually know our root note of each key. It is the key name. So for the key of C, C is our root note. For the key of G, G is our root note. For the key of F, F is our root note, and so on and so on. And that's how we remember our root notes. Now for a major key, like a C major, we have our root note, followed by 7 notes that end with our root note once again. So C and C. So again, we have our C is our 1 or our root, 2 is D, 3 is E, 4 is F, 5 is G, 6 is A, 7 is B, and then our 8th note is a repeat of our root note, which in this case is C. So that's how that works. We also refer to this in music as a scale. Because we're in a major key, C major, that is our C major scale. Okay, so now that we've covered that, hopefully that's helping you just a little bit along the way. We're starting to fill in the gaps and you're understanding a little bit more about keys. Now we're going to take a look at something called the circle of fifths. And this is just a tool that's going to help you to understand keys hopefully a little bit better and their relationship with sharp and flat notes. So let's do that now. Alright, so here's our circle of fifths, and I know it may look a little confusing right now, and that's okay. I'm going to do my best to try to explain all this to you and hopefully help you to understand it a little bit better. But as we said before, what makes a key is the notes that make up the key and how these notes relate to each other. That means we have to look at how many of these notes are sharps or flats. That's what distinguishes one key from another. So if we are looking at the middlemost circle here, you can see that all of these note names are actually representing a major key. And what you'll find in music is the majority of the time you are looking at a major key. So you have C major right at the top of this middlemost circle. And as we know already, C major has no sharps or flats. That's why just above the C here you will find a 0. That's letting you know that none of the notes are sharps or flats, they are all natural. And you have 7 individual notes within a key. So all of those notes from C to C are all natural notes. Now the circle of fifths is set up so that as you move from that C major, that 0 position, to either side of the circle, you are now going to be increasing the amounts of sharps or flats that you find within a key. So if you look at, let's say, the right side of this circle, you move from C major to G major, and you can see that we've now gone from 0 to 1, which means G major has 1 sharp or flat within that key. Now, how do we know if it's going to be a sharp or a flat? Well, the way that this circle is set up is that all of the keys on the right side of the circle are actually increasing the amount of sharps that you find within the key. And then on the left side of the circle, you're actually increasing the amount of flats that you find within the key. And the easy way to know this just quickly is you can see on the left side of the circle, after you pass F, you have B flat major, E flat major, A flat major, and D flat major. So the flat after the note is letting you know that that is the flat side of the circle of fifths. And then if you follow this all the way around the circle to the very bottom, you can see that there is 6 sharps or flats in the keys of F sharp major or G flat major. And if you remember our piano, those note names are actually the sharp and flat names of the same note. So I hope that helps in just identifying whether the notes that are changing in these keys are sharps or flats, depending on which side of the circle they're on. Now, you may be a bit interested in the layout of the actual keys themselves because they don't seem to follow in the same order as the musical alphabet. And the way to remember this, or at least the way I remember this, is through a saying that starts on this F here on the left to the C major, and it goes, Father Charles goes down and ends battle. And that's the way that I remember this. It takes you from the F all the way to the B. And the interesting thing with this is you can actually say this whole phrase backwards as well, which is battle ends and down goes Charles's father. Now, where this saying really comes in handy is when you're trying to determine which note of these keys you're either going to sharpen or flatten. So let's say, for example, we look at our G major. So we know that it has 1 altered note, and we know because it's on the right side of the circle of fifths that it is going to be a sharpened note. So which note is it? On this particular circle of fifths it actually tells you, but let's say we're trying to recall from our memory and we don't have this before us. Well, by using this same phrase, you can actually find out which note it's going to be. If it is on the sharp side, then we follow this phrase through from the beginning. So we have Father Charles goes down and ends battle. Well, the very first note within this phrase is our F, right, for father. Well, that means on the sharp side of the circle of fifths that our first note that gets sharpened is an F. So Father, F, is going to be our 1 sharp in the key of G. If we go to the key of D, now we have 2 sharps. So F is still going to be one of them, but now our next note is going to be C because we have Father Charles. So the C is going to be our next sharp. And then you can see goes is our 3rd sharp in A, and down is our 4th sharp in E, and it continues to follow that pattern all the way through. On the flat side, you can use this phrase in reverse. So for our F, we know that we have 1 flattened note. Well, which note is that? If we start at the end, battle ends and down goes Charles's father, we know that B for battle is our 1st flat. And then if we move to our B flat, where there's going to be 2 flats, the B remains one of our flats, and then we have ends will be our 2nd flat, and that follows in that same pattern for the flat side of our circle. So hopefully that helps you to understand the circle of fifths and that this is a helpful tool as you're trying to remember which sharps or flats, which notes are in each key, because again, those notes are what's going to distinguish one key from another. No 2 keys have the same sharps or flats. So as you're thinking about this and you're going, okay, let's say we're in the key of G, I know that that's Father Charles goes, so that's going to be 1. And I know that the note's going to be a sharp because it is on the sharp side of the circle of fifths. And I know that that first note is going to be an F because, again, Father is the starting word in that phrase for our circle of fifths. So it's the key of G. We're going to start with G. We're going to move alphabetically through all of those notes, but when we get to our F, we are going to move that 1 semitone up to our F sharp. And then we have our key of G, and that's the way that it's going to work for all of the rest of the actual keys on the circle of fifths. So this can be a very helpful tool to remember that. Hopefully it's actually going to help you in your remembering of these keys and be able to recall this quickly as you're trying to transpose from one key to another. Okay, so now we're going to take what we learned from our circle of fifths and actually show you how this works practically. So we already know our C major scale. From C to C, all of the notes sound like they work together, no sharps or flats. Let's take this now and apply it to one of our other keys. Let's say our F major. So, if we have the key of F major, we are going to start on an F note. Because F major is the key name, F will be our root note. So if we start on F, and just as we did with the key of C before, we're going to start counting 7 notes and then once again hit our root note. And we're going to see how that works out. So we've got F is our 1 or our root, 2 is G, 3 is A, 4 is B, 5 is C, 6 is D, 7 is E, and then we hit our F once again. That's our root. But you may have heard that it sounded like there was something off in that movement. So let me start again from F, and you tell me if it sounds like all of these notes work together. Did you hear it? One of these notes sounded off. It's this note right here. Our B note doesn't seem to fit with the others. Well, if we think of our circle of fifths, we know that our F major is 1 position left of our C major, which means that it's supposed to have 1 flat note because it's on the left side of our circle of fifths. Well, what note is that? If we take our reversed phrase, battle ends and down goes Charles's father, we need to take the first word and that will be our flat note. Well, battle is the first word, so our B should be flattened in the key of F major. Well, this note here that didn't work is a B note. So we have to move this down or flatten it 1/2 step or semitone, right? So we're going from B to B flat. And that is the note that's supposed to be in our F major scale. So let's play it now and see if that makes it sound different. Ah, that seems to work better together. Let me play it one more time so you can hear all the notes work together. Did you hear how that works much better than before? I'll play those 2 scales side by side, one with the original B natural note, and then one with the B flat, and you can see how these notes actually help to make the key all work together with its notes. So here's the first one with the B natural. Again, sounds a little off when you hit that B. Now we're going to play the proper note, which is our B flat. And you can hear now how all of those notes work together. So I hope that's shown you just how important it is to figure out what notes you need to play in a key so that all of the notes complement each other and the key actually sounds like it works. Alright, you've had so much information come your way, but you're still holding in there, which is great. So hopefully you're filling in this picture and you're getting a better understanding of keys so far. I actually wanted to just throw in this little trick as well, or tip that I've learned along the way that may help you out in a pinch. So check this out. Okay, so I wanted to show you this quick technique as well. It is the easy way to find any note in any major key without actually having to think about your circle of fifths or figuring out sharps or flats or anything like that. Now, I always recommend actually learning these techniques, learn your circle of fifths, know how to figure this out in a way that just theory-wise makes sense. But if you're ever in a pinch and you just really need to figure out the notes in a key, you can use this technique. So let's say we look at our key of C. So we start on a C, and basically all you're doing is counting the spaces between the notes. So to move from one key to the next one beside it, we call a half step, and to go 2 notes is a whole step. So that's how we're going to be counting everything out. So for the key of C, you've got C is your 1, that's your root, then a whole step, then a whole step, then a half step, then a whole step, then a whole step, then a whole step, and then another half step. So that's the whole C major scale. You've got root, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And that actually works for any major key. I'll show you with the key of F because we looked at that as well. So we should have our B flat or our 1 flat note in here from before. So let's see if this counting actually helps us out with that. So F is our 1 or our root, whole step, half step. There's our B flat, so that's right. Whole step, whole step, whole step, and half step. So you can see that it works for the key of F. Let's look at a key we haven't looked at yet and see if it still applies. How about the key of G? Well, we know that G has 1 sharp because it is the position just right of our C major on the circle of fifths, so it should have 1 sharp note. But we don't even need to figure out what note that is right now, and hopefully this technique will get us there. So there's our G, that's our 1, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step. Oh, there's a sharp note, so that's our F sharp, and then half step brings us back to G. And if we figure it out the way that we've learned already, for 1 sharp it should be father, which is our F sharp, and that means that this counting method has gotten us to the right note for that G major scale. So you can use that technique again if you're really in a pinch and you got to figure this out, but I still think it is better to learn actually how you get there from a theory standpoint. But in this case, it definitely works, and you can use it if you need to get there in a pinch. So I hope that helps as well. Okay, so there's one last thing that I want to talk about before we close off this video, and that is how chords work within different keys. So let's take our C, our key of C again as our example. And what you already know is the scale for a C major. So you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, back to a C. Well, each of those notes we were counting out numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to our root. And those are basically the degrees within that key, right? So D is the 2nd degree in the key of C. And what those notes represent is a chord within that key as well. So what that means is C is your 1 or your root, which also means that the C chord is your root chord or your 1 chord in the key of C, and so on and so on. So if we look at the chords that we already know in the key of C, we have our C, which is our 1. We have our F, which is our 4. We have our G, which is our 5. And then we have our A minor, which is our 6. Now what you may be asking is like, well then why is one of them minor and some of them are major? And that's a good question. But I don't want to throw any more information at you today on top of what I already have. And getting into what makes chords major or minor, we will get into that in a different theory lesson. But for today, what I want to make sure that you know is that what makes or which chords are major or minor is easy to know if you remember this little trick. So the same as we learned which notes are in a key by counting spacings, you just need to remember this order for your chords in any major key. So your first chord, your 1 chord, is always major. So we have our C major. Your 2nd and 3rd chords are minor chords. So that's our D minor and our E minor in the key of C. Then 4 and 5 are major chords. So we have our F major and our G major chords in the key of C. Our 6th chord is a minor chord again, which is our A minor in the key of C. And then we have our 7th chord, which is actually a diminished chord. Again, I'm not going to cover that today, but it's just good to know. So if you're remembering the order for any major key, it goes major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Okay, and that works the same if we look at our key of G. So we know the G chord is our 1, we know our C chord is our 4, our D chord is our 5, and our E minor chord is our 6. And the same thing, because we're going major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. If we look at G, we have G is our 1 chord, so it's major. Then we have an A minor and a B minor, because those are our 2 and 3. Then we have C major and D major, because that is 4 and 5. Then we have E minor, because that's our 6. And then we get to an F sharp diminished, which is our 7th. So that's just another little trick that you can use to know which chords within a key are major or minor. And hopefully that helps you out just to understand. But the 4 main chords that we've been using up to this point that show up most often are our 1 chord, major, our 4 chord, major, our 5 chord, major, and our 6 chord, which is a minor. So that's just how that works with chords in keys. I hope that makes sense. I hope that this whole video has made sense, but I know it's a lot just coming your way to understand keys. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to write them in the comments, and I will do my best to clarify anything that may still be a bit confusing. And hopefully this has just been altogether helpful for you in understanding how keys work in music. So thank you so much for sticking in there, getting to the end of this video, and again, I hope it's been a real help for you in this journey. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, love you guys.